Sorry.
Please be aware if you're attending this meeting, our meetings are recorded for future viewing. We are privileged to gather on the traditional territory of the Kwakwaka'wakw. And ask if there are any additions or amendments to the agenda, and if not, to adopt the agenda after the meeting. Seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll move to 4A, March 30th, 2022, Budget Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Are there any corrections?
Just on 39 slash 22, they reworked motion there regarding 18/2022. Move second carried. A list of available companies that specialize in building restoration for consultation. I think the intent was really much simpler than that. It was just a data sheet of the companies that specialize in refurbishing municipal buildings. It wasn't about, who's available and not available. We're looking for those contact people that have repurposed municipal buildings and who do it as a living.
So to recommend staff prepare a list of available companies that specialize in
Just a list of companies that specialize in refurbishing municipal buildings.
Okay.
442022. No, sorry, the next one down, 462022. Move second defeated to create $100,000 downtown improvement fund for local business. It's $10,000 that I proposed. So if that's corrected.
That same one, I had a question on how Councillor Downey didn't return until 9:58. How did she vote on it?
She just, oh, yeah.
So I don't know if the return is incorrect, or I can't honestly remember the motion if you were here for that or not.
I was not.
No, she was not. So that you and Councillor Downey is should be struck there. Yeah. So that's on 46/2022. Yeah. Because she had left the room. She wasn't participating in that conversation.
Oh, I have one. Right. 42/2022. Just strictly grammar, I guess. Moved, seconded, and carried that. Approve the funding for fire truck accessories through capital financing. We're missing the word. Is it that council approve the funding? Something's missing there. I'd be happy, council.
Yep. Okay, anything else? Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the Committee of the Whole minutes as amended? Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Opposed? Moving down to 9A, to council on the old school and town office costs. Questions for staff on the report? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Garbage pickup for the town office. Sorry, that was all blank.
Garbage pickup, so custodial will put it all in a big bag and Public Works will take it to your.
Oh, okay, so it's all, yeah, okay, gotcha.
So I've got a question on the old school side. I'm assuming custodial, telecommunication and internet, garbage pickup, electricity, and oil, heating bills are items because it's not utilized to its previous capacity, that those would go down.
I think we could reduce the custodial costs, yeah. I think garbage pickup we could probably also reduce. And heating, there's not many people using it, we could look at reducing the heating as well, depending on the level of use.
And there's a certain level that'll have to be heated, right, to.
We have to talk. Councilor Newman?
Thank you for this document. What I really was looking for was in the town office side to see, okay, if the town office was to relocate and operate under the old school, what expenses go away? And it certainly looks like some of them would move over, but it does look like there would be cost savings in terms of, insurance. We're insuring 2 buildings here, and the cost for this one at 24,000 is significant. And with rising insurance costs, that's probably going to be one of those questions we have to talk about as a council, is how many buildings are we going to insure, especially when they're only partially utilized. So, but I see that there's opportunity for savings in operating costs, which was kind of my intention behind the report. So there are savings to be had there. We were to move to a larger location and still be able to offer space for community use to our community. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor Paul.
Yeah, a question about insurance. So we got our insurance through the municipal insurance. I always thought it was just a blanket sort of coverage for the town, but it is specific to buildings.
They're specific to buildings, specific to equipment. Yeah, I just went through the whole of it. And I'm getting ready for it reviews in September, but there's about to be so.
The number does seem high for the town office, like to me, you think there'd be a higher risk in the old school, different recreation groups.
Maybe for discussion coming up, based on value of buildings and use and. Questions? 9B, old school restoration specialist list.
I do have a question, Connor. You prepared this. So are these are people who specialize in restoration of municipal buildings, or are these just engineering companies?
They're engineering companies that bid on the original contract to assess the old schools. Some of them do the actual work. There's a list of actual restoration specialists at the bottom under other potential restoration specialists that actually will do the work.
Councilor County.
Were you able to speak with somebody from UBCM to see if there was some other companies available at all?
So I did speak with, I looked up at the UBCM website and the previous presenters at conferences, and the ones listed were people like IRC Building, RJC Engineering, GHD. The rest of the presenters at the trade shows were more organizations that represent engineering or represent people that might work on them. They were like associations.
Okay, so RJC is one that has a history of doing it. IRC, and you mentioned another one.
IRC.
GHD did have a digital design when I looked at them. And that RJC specifically said retrofitting buildings. When I went through the list, I was looking for more of saying, it's almost like you have a designer to start with who kind of says, okay, you need X amount of offices, X amount of boardroom, X amount of bathroom. And then the technical people to come in and say, well, your plumbers and all, yeah.
So what was the third one? There was 3 that you had mentioned.
I think it was so RJC, GHD, and RDH. Oh, and IRC, I believe, do the actual renovations.
So just, we have, and this is one that Councillor Downey has alluded to, we have a report from the Atlas Group. And it was done in 2018. So I would be curious, and I think it might be a good first step as to, I'd love to see them update with current construction costs, because they listed, you know, all the things that the old school needed in order to even just, I have a few concerns. I wrote some notes for myself, so this is kind of getting legs, right? But we talk sometimes about being a step or two ahead. I'm concerned, can the building be brought up to code? What does that cost? How do we incorporate energy efficiencies and what is the cost? I think if we know those things, it'll help us to determine the next steps. Another thing I think is important is I think we need to have, once we know that, what an impartial public participation process, or we may end up with an expensive building that looks like an old school and it's not what the public wants. Those are some of my concerns that I just wanted to communicate.
So I guess I'm looking at as not as a public use building. I'm looking at it as an administrative building for the town. It's an administrative. We would have more space instead of people sitting in alleyways and, you know, how we're configured currently on this lower floor with an ED person. We're bringing in an assistant now for our public works. Where do they go? You know, what desk are they sitting at? We're running out of space here. You know, there's opportunities, you know, rather than spend money making this one more suitable for people with disabilities. That location is already ground level, and residents have taken place. So my perspective is, one, it expands our opportunity, our room for administration under one roof and one floor, even for that matter. It provides the opportunity to have the gym facility available to the public outside of regular school hours and the cost for user groups to use that would be reduced, because you're not paying school board district staff to open the doors and then custodial cleaning on top of that. And that is, we're talking about gathering places. We are a wet climate. In the winter, having a place to go and play badminton or just shoot hoops or play volleyball, you know, we don't, you know, that's what people are wanting. I grew up in a community, the gym, because it was a different time and era, the gym was open every day of the week. And if you had no excuse to be bored, because on Wednesdays you could go play badminton, on Thursdays it was floor hockey. It was open, and it was every age, every gender. Like there was, and that's what we don't have right now. So how do we get that? Well, we have a building sitting empty. We're paying operating costs there. We're paying operating costs here. We do have the office report, and we know that those costs now have moved up. Absolutely. But what that report does is, all it does is says how to bring it up to a higher standard. It doesn't change the function of the building. It doesn't move a wall. It doesn't reposition things to make it a space that would be more intentional and functional for the design. We have public health that's here next door as well, which we get nominal rent, if anything. It might even be more of a cost to us than anything. And so, and we also need a place for seniors. To me, it's a win-win all the way across the board. And I'd like to have the conversation, and I do think that is the conversation that has to happen at the council chambers. That's not a conversation for you know, this is, you know, we have the responsibility to make the decisions. Some of them are harder and more expensive than others, and this is probably going to be one of them either way. So I appreciate that you singled out the firms. So what I was really looking was the RJCs, the IRCs, the RDH, the ones who can repurpose a facility and make it into something useful. Fort Hardy did it with they had the swimming pool and their arena. They managed to incorporate and put it all under one roof. So I'm just looking at opportunities, and we do have funds for sitting on that. So that's the basis for this. I don't disagree with maybe going and get an update, but I think, you know, maybe just the function, maybe we as council should go and walk through the building ourselves with some key staff and say, what do you think? Is it workable, doable, or not?
And just to add on that, I agree with everything you're saying. You know, that's what the community is asking for. In the very beginning, though, I've always wondered, like, and maybe this is what one of these groups will give us. What is the cost to refurbish that building? And what would it look like? And will it meet the needs of the community? And what would be the cost of a new facility? And maybe the price difference, the community might say, you know what? We're actually willing to commit to this because we're going to get something that much better. That's the only thing that I was saying, is that I just don't want to see us with a refurbished school when perhaps we could end up with something that meets the community's needs. Not disagreeing with anything you said. I think we're on the same page. We're just looking at it from different angles. Any other comments?
Yeah,
Councillor Cole?
Yeah, I think a new facility is pretty out of reach, to be frank. We should have a lot of money for that. And tearing down the old one would be pretty expensive. In Port Alice, they've got their community center, like there's the gym, like you were saying, Councillor Dow, people can go in and do stuff. So it would give us an opportunity to also expand our recreation, maybe do some recreation programs. I think a good question right off the hop is, do we need sprinklers, a sprinkler system, a fire sprinkler system? And I think it's, even if we don't, we should be putting that in for the safety of the staff, the community and everything. So that might be a good starting point. And to be honest, I haven't looked at the Altus report in quite some time. I don't know if that's addressed in there. But maybe something we ask.
Sorry, I was going to say, are you able to make copies for us so that we can all have a copy? That would be great. Do you still have a copy?
I have one.
Okay. Then only for we need.
That would be great to go back and start, because we're all kind of have our own perspectives of where we're coming from. But if right off the hop it says it's $10 million just to bring it up to code, well then maybe we're not that far of a reach to a new building, but just to give us a bit more perspective.
Yeah, I would imagine on your sprinkler point, Councillor Cole, that I would hope an engineering group is going to tell you, okay, this is what you need to code for a public building, and it will include a sprinkler system. If it's not there, definitely has.
See, it's not in there now because we've been grandfathered in, right? So with the town, do we have the power to say, no, do this, or is it building BC code that says you're gonna do it?
It's the code. As soon as you take the walls out, you've got to bring it.
Because it's not used for 6 months, like it's still being used right now.
Yeah.
But if Goshen was classic examples, empty for 6 months, everything's got to be brought up to
Yeah.
code. And it's happening. If I had sprinklers or something, changes the whole use of the facility. It's a lot of user presence.
Okay, thanks for that information then. Any other things to add on that, or anything you wanted to?
I'd like to just ask the Willa Council, is anybody interested in doing a walk through the facility? And just, you know, putting eyes to it from a, you know, we go through there when it's the fair, or it's this, or we go for different things, but when was the last time we walked through there, just to walk through it and look through it with a different lens of possibly having it as an administration?
Yep, I would have walked around with Chris Wu the other day, and both of us were looking at that back green space. And it had come up at the harbor with the idea of possibly putting an outside door into the washrooms. And if there was a way to walk off, you know, you might be able to, if you can increase your flow, that's what we're trying to do in the downtown. The guys had some suggestions of how maybe that could be washroom access as well. So yeah, I'd love to go for a walkthrough.
So acknowledging then that all of our schedules are a little bit different, if we can try to coordinate it so that, you know, we go with Julian, or we just get a key. If there's probably an alarm on it. So if we go with staff, if we can kind of make it be 1 or 2 trips, just so that staff isn't going 4 times, that'd be great.
We shouldn't all be there ourselves unless it's a committee of the whole meeting per se.
Well, we're not moving anything forward. We're just walking through. It's just the same as when we went through the sewage place together. We all walked through and they told us what was what. And yeah, we're not talking about making any decisions. We're just going there to take a look. As long as we don't move anything forward, we're good. Okay. Item 9C, historical tax rates. I will turn this over to, well, it's all, the information's all there. So do you have any questions for our CFO? Did you have anything that you wanted to add? Before I go to questions.
Nothing to add. It was just, it's interesting how this all came about. Learning about it, so information's there, but if you have questions, I'll answer.
I will ask, and I did, I know I asked yesterday, so I will re-ask. Okay. Who is considered for major industry?
Right, so
The light industry and the managed force, please.
sure. So major industry is Orca and Western. Orca is 14%, Western is 86%, so that's class 4. And then class 5 and class 7 are all Western 100%.
Just a comment regarding class 7, the managed forest land, because we talk about the CD1, the land at the end of each drive beyond ours. That is zoned CD1. That is still classified as under the tax rate managed forest land.
So why
That
is that?
That's
Because,
not the question.
Yeah.
Probably the CEO is better to answer.
because they haven't.
They haven't done
they're-
it on their end.
They
They
haven't
haven't taken
taken
it
it
out
out
of
of
the managed forests yet.
So we'll never get fair market. business.
Yeah, I looked on BC assessments right now. I think that chunk of land is worth is assessed at 103,000. Imagine tax base we have as an R1 or two, whatever.
Maybe the motivation, right, needed to develop that land.
Well, we don't have a choice. It's not our decision, but what we could do is roll it back to A1 rural, and then we're back in the driver's seat.
But if they
I don't
haven't
know if
taken,
we have that authority.
Sure, we sure do. We have all our zoning.
but if they haven't taken it out of managed forest,
then
I think that's the problem, right? It's still in managed forest land.
Yeah.
At the level above us. So until they pull it out of there with an intent to do something, our zoning doesn't really mean anything from a tax perspective.
From a tax perspective, it doesn't, but we can change the zoning to A1 rural, and then we're back in the driver's seat. If they want to come to us with a proposal or whatever.
To
then they have to
rezone it.
rezone.
I understand what you're
And
saying.
then we maybe get what we want, or what the community wants, because this whole deal happened a long time ago. Times have changed. There's absolutely no multi-housing in the CD1, right, for starters.
those tiny homes, small scale tiny.
Let's make a motion.
Can I just make just one, it's very interesting to me that the onus is all on them to pull it out to CV1. I just can't, there has to be, and I know that you're not the person, I'm gonna look maybe at you to, has to be a way that we can prompt them or request the, I can't believe that we just have no power until they want to pull it out. And it's zoned for CD1, like, not zoned for CD1, sorry, it's got a bylaw sitting in it, the CD1, and yet that entire area. You're saying that it's completely up to the landholder to make sense of
This
it.
bugged me from day one, the first EBCM, I went right to the assessment, got the emails I forwarded to you guys.
Yep.
You just-
So this isn't the only parcel though. If you go to BC assessments, you will see that the land at the end of just beyond the campground is also managed forest lands. And we've assigned a zoning for that as well. And there's other properties surrounding us. We've assigned zoning, but they're sitting in the managed forest lands. So we know what we would like. And that's, I believe, why we've undertaken to establish conversation with those landowners to say, hey, look, we need place to grow. You have land. We need to expand our tax base. We need residences. You know, what are you doing? And that's for us to go and ask that question. We can sit and wait, or we can ask. And so if you look in Campbell River, they also were surrounded by managed forest lands, and now those are being moved out of that category, and they're brought into residential properties. That's the whole Jubilee Heights. I think it's Jubilee Heights area and stuff. So it's happening, but we probably have to start poking and asking.
Well, what I was gonna say is we had a sort of preliminary meeting and, oh, yeah, we'll meet with you, and for nothing, so I got a little note to myself to go there, is that meeting? It's gonna move along if you
Well, you
you
met
got to
with
the
the CAO
table.
with them, and it was just sort of came out of that, or?
No, it was just, well, we met with
Yeah,
staff actually, and I just sat
yeah, there was discussion around the campground and kind of what that looks like and saying like, if we're going to invest and continue on, we need a longer term contract because it ends in December. So it's for us to help make decisions as well to get into a longer term contract. And then also there was talk about the property at the end of Beach Drive. And can I ask the question, like, are we on the radar? And if we're on the radar, where are we? Are we 2 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out? There's no real commitment from them, but we are in their eye kind of sight, just where it falls in is. But they said we're also in a good position too with a lot of our infrastructure and things like that. So I think a follow-up meeting is needed to kind of keep moving that along.
And they made a comment on the OCP as well. We were in a good
Yeah.
position because we've got an updated OCP. So it sounds like everything is right.
Yeah, it just needs like someone speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will speak again.
The lack of development or the potential development there hamstrings us on the hill, right? So how long are we gonna wait? Is my point, if we change it to.
What is it?
No,
Now streets on the hills.
Because who's gonna build up, invest up here when the deep pockets are.
I can answer that question. So they said that they actually moved very slowly. They used Campbell River as an example. And because we talked about, you and I talked about it afterwards, if somebody started developing there, they're not gonna, okay, bang, and get going. They don't work like that. It would be a 3 to probably 5 year process. So I don't think it's going to, if somebody gets going in the next little bit, it's not going to be usurped by them down there. They just don't move like that.
It took them 18 years to get the Jubilee Heights done, to get to shovels in the ground and putting up structures. We don't, we're hoping for a shorter time frame, and I think because our infrastructure is there, I spoke with them too after our OCP meeting, because the infrastructure is there and we have the capacity, we're in a much better position. So I don't think that has any bearing on what happened on that hill. Or adjacent to the hospital of that property as well.
Are they concerned at all about the heavy industrial area we have at the end of Beach Drive? Like, I just never bought that. We made the decision, we'll move forward. But like, why would you develop all that land? There could be a power factor. They don't get it. Where is the pavement? Are they gonna pave Mine Road? It's like, there's a lot
Yeah, they
of
did talk a
options.
bit about other, just sort of high level, didn't make mention of a specific community, but where that happens and, that they're sort of the mindset that you need industry, you need that land to have the jobs, and it's sort of, they said it's something that, definitely, they didn't say struggle with, but that they come up against, and sometimes residents will want to rezone that, so it's not near there, but then they run out of places to actually bring new industry in. So, yeah, they're.
So,
It's NIMBYism
Yeah.
again, right?
so who owns each town? That's a huge parcel there. Why aren't we talking to them? Trying to get industry in there. Turning it housing. It's a huge parcel. So if we're all concerned about that, we should be having the same discussions. Shell Canada or something? I don't know.
It's not their town boundary.
It's not a boundary, yes. And we, you excluded, or it was suggested and was excluded, no auto wrecking yards, but the list is huge there. There could be tons of really loud and obnoxious places there. And then we have the same going in this end of town, right? So it's kind of bugged me. Which way are we going? And is that what we really want?
Well, the A-frame had loud obnoxious noises too for quite some time. It was paved because of Mrs. Betts complaining about the dust flying over
Oh,
the house.
just used to.
Yeah. Sorry, you're trying to make a motion.
Yeah, I want to make a motion to increase the tax rate for class 4, 5, and 7 to the maximum.
Light industry is Western.
And major.
There is 14% Orca, 86% Western.
So WFP is major and minor, major and light.
Pretty much everything. Yeah, little bit is Orca.
And if I look at the historical rate.
We don't have a
Sorry,
second.
Sorry, yes.
Cheryl seconded, so we can talk.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry. So I'm looking at 17, 18, those are historical. And we have been making incremental increases.
If I may, we just finished having the conversation about trying to incentivize development. Nothing like land costing you more money than making anything off it. And I do want to go back to putting huge investments in our fire department. We provide fire protection at Western. And for that reason alone, I think it's justified if we have to explain ourselves. And, it's a drop in budget, $38,000 for a huge company like that.
Well, I'm gonna say a couple of things about that. One, the managed forest lands, if we go to the maximum, I mean, it's going to get us 1,800 extra. So the biggest is in the light industry. I agree, Western is a large company, but we also have, right now, we're in the midst of this old growth strategic review, or the old growth deferrals. And there are layoffs happening, and there are no permits at the current time being handed out. So, we don't know what it's going to look like in the next 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. I'm not in disagreement with you. We have made a commitment that we move up those rates and get them near or at the maximum. I'm just struggling with that one because of what's currently going on.
Extra. I just caution going to the very max because these are based on last year's rates and can't exceed the rates. And if they do go down a little bit, it's a similar position. So near max would be.
Well, the nature of my motion will be max, so whatever the numbers come in next year, that's just, I assume,
Okay.
yeah, you're never gonna get us in trouble, charge too much.
When will the rates be?
They're coming quickly. I was given a contact person that I could get the 2022 rates, so it's just a matter of getting.
I would support taking the managed forest land to the max. I too struggle with the other as well, just because there's other factors, there's other things going on in industry right now for both Orca and Western. And so, I don't want to tilt somebody's hand to shut something down completely. I'd like to see these industries still operating.
$30,000 is gonna bring Western to its knees. We can do a lot with that money, our town. That's our whole taxing. We could have no tax increase for all the residents.
I think it's the signal that it sends.
Yeah, I know, that's what it is. The single for forestry, we're not gonna go against forestry at all. It's because the money is insignificant. Company like that, that's a couple months of employees' wage.
So these rates will automatically be going up anyways, because we've been pushing them up each year. I believe we have a schedule to move them up on a percentage basis.
So 2%.
2%. Yeah.
We'll never get there.
Are you in favor of altering the motion to increase class 7 to the max?
I prefer you just vote down the motion. You can make a motion. It's not gonna- $1,800. It's not really. Yeah, what the point of that is, raising by $1,800 if we're not. Still not good optics, right? No matter how you look at it.
Did we actually have a conversation with Orca and WFP, or do we know, like, did Claudia?
Well, I think staff did, but at that time it was way different. It wasn't clear that the 14%, as far as for Orca goes, the 14, it was only that they were only 14% of it. And it looked at that time that the increase was going to be quite substantial for Orca alone. Which is now it's
Now
not
it's
the
the other
case.
side.
Now it's the other way around. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's defeated. Any other motions out of that?
Just to staff, when does this have to be set?
This has to be set the same day we accept the budget, so May 10th, I think, or May 13th.
So we can table this for one more.
Say, and
Okay.
you should
I'll
have
motion we
it.
receive this information if that's.
Well, actually, no, just table it and then it'll come back on the next budget discussion. if We table it.
Oh, right, sorry, our next. First and second. May 3rd, so probably the last is. probably May 3rd. After that was-
Would you bring this back to us on the 26th, which are the new rates?
Yeah, or it could even come to, yeah, I was gonna say, it could even come to the council meeting before, but yeah, on the 28th, if you want to bring it back. Because that's not, and if that isn't enough time, then we can just bump this report to the next council meeting.
Is it worth talking to them? Maybe they're happy to
Yeah.
pay more money.
Yeah,
But that's-
Going like the
that's-
fire truck argument is.
Yep.
that's the next part of what I was gonna say. So who is that?
We will have that conversation.
Is that staff conversation or a council conversation?
Well,
That's a mayor and council
Yeah.
conversation.
With Western? That's
yeah,
what-
well, Mosaic, I'm going to be saying, where's our meeting? Because they said a meeting was forthcoming with us. So I've got that on the list and I know that, you know, I'm able to get a hold of Glenn Cadwalader. I can talk to him about the tax increase piece. And also invite him if he would like to come and speak to council.
More as well.
I'll find out what the figures will be, show you later. Okay. Okay. We've got item 9D, operating budget. Here we have your proposed operating budget.
Question?
Yep, go ahead.
Under expenses, which is page 15 of 21. In 21 actual, we have museum visitor info center at 17,000. Moving it to 144. But we know that in 2021, our visitor center was incorporated with the harbor. And museum, I think the check was 17,000. So where have we allocated for the staff that worked at our visitor center out of the harbor office for 21? Because I feel like we're not really, our comps aren't comparable.
You talking about summer students now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, just a second. So as far as I know, there should have been an admin allocation, but I'm not sure that, I'll just have a look. That's how it's worked. I'm gonna be looking at the allocations again this year, coming in a little more closely than it was.
When you say allocation, does that mean
So
like for part of the accounting department, but Public Works would actually be, when they do the job down there, it's coded to it. The visitor center summer students, they would be actually coded to it as opposed to,
yeah, so
or
I
is
think
that a change in the way the accounting is getting done?
so looking at last year, it doesn't look like there was a wage allocation to the Museum Visitor Center. So if it was Harbor students or Harbor, some of their time when it came in should have been said, you know, like I spent 20% of my time working Visitor Center, but it doesn't last year that happened. So going forward, Laura and I are working on.
And I know it was minimal because we were still cataloging things. And I know my son was one of them who was over doing some cataloging, but there wasn't a whole lot of time. It's mostly at the visitor center and then, yeah. It would be the year before that would be more accurate. No, I guess the year before that, it would be more accurate.
So then maybe my follow-up then is harbor. We're moving from 419 to 423. Museum from 17 to 144. But with respect to harbor, we know that 419 is harbor / visitor info center. there's two elements in there. So I would have thought that Harbor for 2022 would have had a reduction. Although if we did some reclassification of capital to, which it doesn't look like we did. If we did some, reclassification, that might have changed it, but I had sort of thought I would see Harbor drop.
That's a good point.
Not by much, because it would be your visitor center and museum employees. Maybe some of the electricity. I'm not sure what else you would allocate. So maybe some of the insurance from Harbor over to museum visitor.
So our visitor center doesn't include the extra staff to work for the visitors then?
Yeah, the visitor center includes the museum manager's salary plus summer students. So they're going to be dedicated summer students to the museum / visitor center.
But previously they were Harbor / visitor center. That's what she's saying. So
Right, yeah.
the visitor center part that's in the Harbor in the 2021 actual should come off the proposed for the next year because it's being shifted down to the museum, right, visitor. That's,
We've added the whole position, is the lion's share of that increase, correct?
And summer students.
Yeah.
And summer students.
So
So,
we added
I mean, if,
well-paid positions, so I don't.
and how many summer students did we have at Harbor last year? Yeah, I'm sure there's, so they're going to be 3 Harbor, 3 museum and info. So if they have, I'm not sure if that district was 4 or 5. So that's now moving over. So you're correct that they would probably go down. And with the allocations for Harbor. Down. Yeah. Thanks.
We'll check into that.
Yeah. Any other questions?
The 5-year proposed operating budget, which is page 20 and 21. We have taken revenue for fire, pool, campground, and we've made them static over the 5-year period. There's no changes at all. When you come down to the expense side for same categories. So for example, campground, we see campground expenditures rise. So I guess really my question is we're capturing the increase in costs over that 5 years out, but we aren't acknowledging that any revenue increase in the upper line. And I guess my thought is that if our costs are going up, well then, we need to be looking at increasing the revenue side of it as well. So that would be the pool and the campground. The fire department, I understand, is sort of that's just a placeholder because that will be what it'll be. Every year is different. So not so much that, but probably pool and campground. I just wondered why they didn't adjust.
Yeah, so I have some comments on that. So the pool, from my understanding, there hasn't been an increase in, I'm not sure how long. So I think we need to do an analysis on it, cost analysis, and see if the town or council wants to do an increase to that. From my understanding, it's a service we provide, and pools don't normally generate a lot of revenue. So that's more for discussion and also kind of a placeholder along with the fire department because it's going to be more decision here as to how we move forward with that one. The campground, I left static as well because at the end of December, we don't even know if we're going forward again. And I can't assume with expenses that they will be going up, but for right now, it's also kind of a placeholder because I don't know. And even what the data is, I mean, this year we'll have good data. Our Let's Camp reservation system is up and we're already seeing revenue coming in and it's working well. So I think we're going to have really good data at the end of the year to see if it's viable, what we're making, who our users are, and maybe moving forward, do we advertise and make it more like improvements on it. So I think next year's forecast will be a little bit accurate and easier to forecast.
I have a question I'm going to ask yesterday. I'll re-ask again. So under council, do those figures include travel, and what is that amount for travel?
Right. So I put training and travel at 10,000. In the past few years, it's been difficult to budget because of COVID. So there's a lot of learning that can be done online. So I don't know if council's moving that direction. I don't know if you'd like an increase to that for travel and training per year.
Well, I was just looking at, just with ADICC and the number that went and just doing a ballpark figure per person, we're probably at over half of, and we haven't even got UBCM yet. Never mind about any other training that could, possibly be beneficial for, or any other conferences that might be beneficial for council to attend. The other question I have is, do we have policy around that?
Right, so that's my next, kind of committed myself to working on policy and trying to get 1 month kind of completed and done. So we have a little more, policy just gives us more direction, more the expectation out of what's expected of that. And in training and travel right now for, I don't even know if Councillor Downey says, oh, I want to take, a cooking class and it's going to benefit the community because I'm going to put on a course, right? Like, well, really, I don't know if that's an expense that council would approve or not. Like, is it for the betterment of the town? Possibly. If it's the betterment of Councillor Downey, possibly. So we really need, I'd like council, I would request council to think about what is fair, like what is fair for mayor, what is fair for council, what parameters fall in there. Of course, it should be for the town, right, to improve the town and knowledge and professional development, but I think we need to really define what is travel and training and add the value of what it is. So if you can put some thought on that, to what you think, because you do the position, you're in the position, so you know more than I do.
Thank you, Norton. In the past, we, at the council table, I want to go who's going and we vote who's going. But that didn't happen this time. So, that kind of made me a little nervous.
Yeah.
We should probably all should vote it on it.
That's the process. I think even going forward as well, like for myself, each year I kind of look forward and say, okay, these are the things in my professional development I'd like to do. This is what I'd like to achieve. It's going to help the town in this kind of way, a rationale with it. I mean, if we set it up for the next council, that this is what is expected of you, what does your plan look like for this year when we get to budget time, for next year? And we can kind of budget those things with having those parameters in place of saying these are the things that you can kind of do, right? So then we're in a better place when we come to budget. We're not answering these questions now. We've already had it in place.
Yeah, because there's a number, sorry, go ahead.
I thought, I'm just going to suggest that we probably need to double that.
Mhm.
And I'm going to tell you why. Because there were a number of votes that came on the floor in the resolution section. And it's, we raise our cards, voter pass, it goes to UBCM. UBCM, the same thing. They can do a weighted one, but they typically don't. They do it by show of hands or standing. They have clickers now. So if, for example, there's something we're passionate about and we send one representative to that meeting, we'll have one vote there. And we can have Victoria with 9 people standing there and voting on a position that would be, completely contrary or counter to the viability of our community. So I think that we've looked at conferences from, a meet and greet and networking and gathering of information. But I think that the resolution, it's really become clear in these last few years. The resolution section has become utterly important in a way that never was before. And I think that there may be a day where we send a whole council to UBCM. Hopefully they're able, but it's schedules permitting, but there may be a day where that is. We must do that because we will be outvoted and our voice will not be heard at the provincial level. So I think our budget's light. I think that, this councils can decide how they manage it, but I do think we need to start thinking more strategically as we go to the UBCMs and the ABICCs.
And I don't know how Councillor Cole felt, but that's something I think that as opposed to the first orientation meeting, that person that comes in gives you 8 hours of governance. There's things I've heard from the two of you just in the last 3 or 4 months that went, because I didn't come in, you had a bit more of a background on size than I do, what ABIC was, or UBCM or any of that stuff. And so I think from that at the beginning, to exactly what you just said, it's that strategy, it's that that these are the reasons why we do this. It's not just a meet and greet or
I would even say of 20,000, like doubling it. Well, I was thinking it might be lightly. It's in Whistler this year. And so, you know, that means you can't fly. There's all those kinds of things, right? If it's in Vancouver, you can fly, actually cheaper than drive.
I was just wondering about, for budget purposes, why not full mayor and council, ABICC and EBCM? And if somebody decides they want to go to the Harvard conference more, you know, can make exceptions for that, or if somebody wants to say, hey, no, this is more important to me, I'd rather just give it to the ABICC.
So I think that's kind of what.
Yeah. Some councilors give their, like, have a budget for the mayor and a budget for the council, and so long as it fits under the policy, they can kind of choose as well. So there's a number of different ways that we can do it. I think it's a great idea what you're saying about for us to think about it and go, these are the things that would be important for myself and to attend, and then we can build a budget around it. But for sure, I would say it's got to be double. 10 is, I'm sure we're over half of it already gone. So.
That's a formal motion.
I'll motion that we double the counselor travel and training. 20,000. Second for that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Quite frankly, said it before, not being counter, 2 + 2 is not always 4 for me. These numbers are here, they're great, they're beautiful. You have numbers in every column. I'm more interested in hearing about the policies and the procedures and what you're going to do so that we get a comparable year to year where it actually all is the same, because every account does everything a little bit differently. So getting us into a spot where we've got some policy and some procedure around how this gets done. I mean, when we started, the first gentleman there was saying that he couldn't tell me how many hours public works have done on the garden, because now we're getting, if the policy is, these are your guys' time cards, this is how you're gonna fill it out, this is how Laura's gonna enter it. I'm more interested in hearing that, like, quite honestly, than some of the actual numbers.
So yeah, so like I mentioned, I'm committing to working on a policy a month, because I've already committed to a couple situations where if I had a policy, it'd be easier to say, this is X, Y, Z, because, I mean, it doesn't need to be like so tight, and it still needs to have judgment to be able to make business decisions. But at least it gives us some direction on what we can do. So number one policy that I'm working on right now is the safety for the work safe and liability. Next, Laura and I are going to start implementing a month-end process where we actually balance all our balance sheet accounts for subledgers, make sure everything's there. I'm going to be working this month without our month-end process, but just to get started with the department heads, sending them a variance report. So their budget to their actuals, where they're at, and if they're getting high, why are you high? Like what happened that you can identify, so we can look at those things and I'll start building our budget, right? So if you're high, oh yeah, this happens, you know, once every 3 years, and I forgot about it this year, so then I build it into the budget, right? So 3 years I put it in with the note. And look at those things too. I mean, we might have budgeted too high in one line item and not enough in the other. So we can massage that and we can really start understanding where money's coming from, what we're using it for. It really doesn't need to be there. And along with the allocations too, the wage allocations and benefit allocations. I've seen in the past that the wages have kind of been allocated, but the benefits weren't following either. And that's a big component to the wages. So that really needs to be reflected as well. So that's another allocation we'll be working on. Yeah. So there's quite a few things that are on my list to make sure that we're buttoning things up and really being thoughtful and understanding of actually what is happening out there. And if we need more money, identify those things. And if we can do it, that, you know, maybe claw back on those things and even reassess, like, what are we using these things for? Do we still use them? Do we still even need to carry them forward, right? So really just assessing, this is my year to kind of work with everybody and be in the I guess nuts and bolts, but also come back and look at the bigger picture and how that works moving forward. But I think that will really help build us forward and be able to have a good forecast of
But I don't ever want to sit here feeling like it's a March Madness.
No, and I don't want to feel like that either. I feel like when we get to Christmas time, that the budget's pretty much built itself. Like it should be pretty fluid, right? Like it's not something that we should be panicking in January, February. Oh my God, it's budget time. Like we should be in a place where we feel comfortable in making these decisions along the way instead of like, oh my God, the harbor needs, 500,000 for about this. Why is it just coming to us?
Well, and that was what kind of happened, and I love the direction that we're going in. I like seeing the line items in future years and knowing, okay, there's a capital expense coming up there, and how are we going to get there? And instead of just, oh, here's the list, what's important, what isn't important? Well, it is important because we put it on the list, or we wouldn't have put it on the list. Yeah, it's really good. Go ahead.
Question for Brenda. So we get the reports are great, and so I noticed, and with you too, Connor, like you're signing it, but he isn't. So I'm just a little curious. It's like, is he reviewing these documents, or like why is his name even on there if it's signing it?
So Pete does review every document for me. So I send it in a Word form
Yeah,
for Pete to
yeah.
review, and he gives his comments, and then I sign. I can forward it on to Pete to.
I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, but it's like a lot of our documents have.
I actually did one year this time, and I was why do we have that?
Why do we have the
Bother
signature
to
at the
sign?
top?
I can ask him too, if it's still needed, if we do need it or not.
Or take his signature
if we
and
don't.
line it off.
Yeah, if we don't, it's just one more
Yeah.
step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously he approves all these agendas and stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm viewing it,
Yeah.
so either put your name to it. Or not, I guess.
So do you have, first of all, are there any further questions on the operating portion? And question for Brenda, do you have what you need from us to?
I'm looking for approval of the operating budget today. To move
So
forward.
Yeah, except that there's the harbor piece that we still need to, just some of that shift, the harbor, and then that was one of the things that I heard question was, are those completely accurate? And should some of that harbor shift, and why not? And maybe that. Simple as I.
I'm fine approving this as it is. If there's some adjustment there, then adjust it.
Okay.
It would go down. If anything, it's gonna come
It's
down.
down.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
gonna, it's not gonna increase. So.
And then to approve the operating budget. Discussion on that? And yeah, then motion to adjourn, please. Second, in favor, it's carried. Thank you very much.
Thanks, to ask, so I don't want to ask it in public.
You're up there.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay, done.
Yeah.
No, I think I might have even put it.
Okay, we'll see you upstairs.
It's probably.